Hey, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to our webinar. This is our latest in our series. Today, we're going to focus on, in the advertisement, we talked about it being the subscription economy, but what we're learning is there's a lot more to the subscription economy than just subscriptions. It's really all about the solution economy. So this will be part two of our discussions, and today we're going to focus in on customer scenarios. We're going to talk about two ways that customers are engaging with SAP and Bramasol around the concept of BRIM and RAR brought together. So as always, as you know, the webinar is being recorded. So please feel free to go ahead and download it, share with other people. You can ask questions in the frame below throughout the session. And then I encourage you to go ahead and download previous webinars from our homepage. Contact us on bramasol.com, Facebook, and LinkedIn. You can also subscribe and go to YouTube. We have a YouTube channel and would love to see you there. All of these will be up, as well as customer stories and other great content. And by the way, we have a podcast going, and we'd love to have all of you subscribe. Head on up to Apple iTunes and subscribe to our podcasts. You'll get to hear Pete's voice on there, and Richard will get you on there soon too. And you can also listen to, I was excited to learn that we're on iHeartRadio, so go check that out. Today, we're going to do an intro of the speakers in a moment, and then we're going to focus in on a couple of key user stories or scenarios. The first one is going to be about business model change and talking about how the combination of BRIM and RAR bring together an opportunity for you to do business model change or enable that. And next, then we'll talk about a user story or a scenario focused on process optimization. And we'll try and hold some time open for questions and answers. So please join us. Let me do this. Let me introduce my friends and colleagues here. I am John Froelich, of course. I am the VP of Strategy and Marketing for Bramasol and your host. I'll introduce Pete Graham. Introduce yourself, maybe, Pete. You are a frequent contributor and speaker here, so welcome.
Thank you, John. Glad to be here. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. Yeah, my name's Pete Graham. I'm part of the LOB Finance Solution Management Business Development team, covering core accounting change topics such as revenue recognition and lease accounting.
Excellent. And Richard Chan. Richard, welcome.
Thanks, John. Happy to be here. Richard Chan. I'm part of the Office of CFO and the different type of solutions in that area. And I predominantly focus on billing revenue innovation management, or the order to cash portion of it. Part of the COE. Happy to be here.
Excellent. Great to have you here. All right. So we're going to start diving into customer scenario number one, the business model changes. Before we do that, though, I was reading, as I always do, looking at a whole bunch of research, and I found it really interesting, and I thought I'd share this statistic with everybody. How fast is the world changing and moving? And I got this out of a recent PwC paper that they did. But what I found fascinating here is if you look at this, since 2009 to 2019, we've seen significant increase in e-commerce. But since the 2019, and certainly since the beginning of this interesting time we're in with the COVID and the change in the economy, we've seen the same amount of growth in less than a year in e-commerce penetration that we have seen in the 10 years previously leading to that. In addition, I saw there's a great newsletter that I get. It's called, it's all about visual content. They do a lot of infographics, but they had a really interesting piece in here from Profit. And it talked about the key drivers of digital transformation. And of course, that's what SAP and we're all talking about, is this idea of digital transformation. And what I found really interesting is in the top 3 areas, we noticed that in digital transformation that they did a survey of, new market growth, evolving customer behavior and preferences, and increased competitive pressure are really driving the use of new models and new ways of going to business. But also interesting is a topic near and dear to Pete's heart, which is this idea of new regulation and compliance standards that's forcing these models. So that's why I thought this would be really interesting, because this highlights that convergence of what we're going to talk about, which is the convergence of the order to cash process or tools that Richard talked about, known also as BRIM, Billing, Revenue, and Innovation Management. And then, of course, marrying that together with tools such as RAR to really provide you this combination of insights and tools that you can use to accelerate your business transformations. So the first thing I want to talk about is this idea that Richard, you, Pete, and I have been talking about for a while, is this move to new models. And we talked about how business models are changing and how companies are beginning to focus on, and why I'm changing from this idea of just subscription to XASS or outcome-based models. And BRIM is a unified solution that SAP offers. It's an order-to-cash complete solution. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about this unified solution that comes with lots of capabilities and flexible deployment options to kind of set the stage.
Yes, sure, John. Thank you. Yes, so if we look at the solutions that SAP offer, a lot of our customers currently have the standard, we call it SD, or sales and distribution, or in the S4 it's sales. That's predominantly the ability to sell physical and deliver physical goods. And there was a trend years ago that we had to come up with an industry solution that really focused on services. But the unique thing about the solution is it will combine both the service and the physical goods, so you can have it in combination. So BRIM does work in combination with sales and distribution, so that you can give this solution selling. And now, instead of selling physical products and delivering those products to your end customer with, of course, there's other different services on top of that if you have to install. But the ability of BRIM, or enhancing that process, really give the flexibility of, well, we're going to sell you this product, or maybe moving from a one-time sale into a subscription, and not only a subscription, but maybe an outcome. So really it depends on the customer needs. Of course, they drive a lot of the behavior. So we have to think of how flexible can we be in the billing aspect of it and the invoicing and collection aspect of the solution. So it's not just so much having the ability to just sell a product, but what are different ways of you selling it? And we always hear this from, and you may also find yourself going into either a retail or a non-retail or wholesale, if you're into that, or you have the ability to go into a wholesale and look at with the ability to buy. And a lot of times, even take, for example, is a very large tool manufacturer for in professional tools, like they have looked at a lot of selling the tools and the batteries, and the batteries have to be recycled, and warranty, etc. And they thought that, well, maybe if we offer it as a service, in other words, we sell it by the use or the number of days that you have out, or number of hours, depending on the different components and the wear that they have. And they guarantee that, hey, every time you pick up our tools, they're always going to be performing at this level, and we guarantee it because we know when the breakdown is, we'll swap it out. So you don't have to worry about, hey, I'm out in the field and my lithium battery is no good. I have to go, scramble and go find a store to replace it. So it's more of a service instead of buying. So no longer, if you can see, there's the ownership is not that interested anymore. It's really just, hey, I just want to pay as I use.
Yeah, no, and that's great. I know that, I would love to have an option to subscribe to a battery service for my power tools, because for some reason my drill never charges those batteries properly. So it'd be awesome to have that, of course. Mm-hmm. So Richard, how are you seeing, you deal with a lot of different companies, from some of the world's largest media companies, the world's largest technology companies, the companies who are a little bit smaller but are implementing these business model changes. Can you talk, for example, for a minute about how are certain companies leveraging BRIM, quote unquote, or the order to cash tools as a way to accelerate and enhance their new business model changes?
Mhm. Yes, it really depends on I learned that word when I first joined SAP. Developers, they always say the word depends, so apologies for that. Uh, Well, what we like to do is we want to make sure that we understand what what the client issues are. It's not acceptable that we come in and say, hey, we just want to replace everything you own with SAP products. It's usually not the case.
Right.
For existing SAP customers or even customers that are thinking about looking at a solution within SAP, what's unique about our BRIM solution, it's end-to-end, but it's also componentized, which means that we have situations where large or small, customers come to us and say, well, look, I'm not interested in revamping my entire order to cash, but I need to add an element of the subscription, for example, or metered. In other words, I sell this product, but I would also like to add the element of maybe a monthly subscription to a service, or just basically anytime there's a breakdown or a usage of our service, we will charge as you use the service. So a combination of those two, but I don't want to revamp my entire order to cash infrastructure. But if you can give me a solution where I can add on and it's flexible and it works with my environment, that'll be something that'll be really interesting to me. So we have customers like that, large and small, very large customers. We have use cases where there's a huge a wireless carrier in Canada where we actually swapped out a competitor type of order to cash. Really, in the pricing, rating, and charging is one of the most complex pricing or rating is in telecommunication, and we offer that capability. And it's more of no longer you're into hiring consultants to really 6 months, give me 6 months so I can configure the new pricing models. It's really configurable so you can launch new service and be competitive overnight if that's required.
Interesting. Okay. And so, how do you see that, as you look at companies that are more traditional? We look at some of the companies who, make printers or make computers or do things. How are they going about the process of evaluating and talking to SAP about the business model changes and how BRIM helps with that?
Yes, it's really coming in. When I first heard of this, I thought, okay, who would want to just pay by the use? But that's actually coming. I mean, Dell announced that they're basically going to, you don't need to own their laptops or their desktops. They basically, well, it's a service. So they provide these products for you as a service, and the great thing about it is that they will maintain it. We had a printer company that switched, and they realized that they make more money providing the service than the actual printer. And like you mentioned earlier, John, about your power tools, I'm in the same boat. Find a project and then let's go buy all the tools, and you realize that they should give the tools away for free because this is the battery that costs the most.
Oh my
And
God.
if they offer a subscription model, I might be thinking, well, maybe instead of buying the new DeWalt or Milwaukee or Hilti, it's why don't I just pay X dollars a month, and I know that the tool will always perform as needed. And that's kind of where a lot of the buying is coming from. So that's key. That's really important. Is really to have that ability and to make sure that you can have that tool or this mechanism that you purchased to be function, whether it's a service or a product.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talk about examples. Pete, RAR really complements BRIM with revenue insights. We talk about, the things that are coming up in certainly in optimized contract management and the concept of, day-based contract changes and things. How is RAR evolving to really complement this BRIM? And I know you talk to a lot of businesses because you and I have been on the same calls about these subscription companies.
Yeah, man, I think that first slide you showed with the graphics was really good. I mean, we're seeing constant business model evolutions, and we've seen this for a while, and I think the COVID-19 crisis is really accelerating a lot of those virtual business model changes. And you know, as Richard's highlight, BRIM is really kind of on, I would say, the beginning side of that, or the front end of that, right, with, you know, the pricing and the forecast and all the capabilities they have. But at the end of the day, then the customers, a lot of our customers want to know kind of where, you know, how does this impact their bottom line? Hence, they need to calculate the revenue. So for a long time, right, BRIM and RAR have had this integration to allow you to do that. And some people do it on the forecasting. But more to your point, we've been seeing more and more this real-time nature come in, right? Where companies want to calculate things more quickly, meaning like they don't want to do batch runs at the end of the month. They want to calculate in real time, or as much real time as possible. And so some of the things that RAR is evolving is more toward that, right? So optimized contract management is kind of a step toward that, but really we're trying to get more and more real time, right, as we go through the process. Now, ultimately in a close cycle, there are, you know, the soft closing task and the hard closing task. So ultimately it's, you know, you may not be able to get fully real time on everything, but the idea is to give you, you know, the most real time insights, right, while still meeting some of the other qualities or qualifications you have in a closed cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and the other thing that you know, RAR brings to the table, and I think it complements BRIM that way. And we talked about, Richard talked about the flexibility. If you think of the flexibility of BRIM, or the need for flexibility around things like changing subscription plans and evolving subscription plans, and doing it real time as you begin to see the market move and the market data, and you can begin to change those plans, or rolling out new business models, and using the tools flexibly, or looking into, and we'll talk a little bit about AR/AP in a few minutes. But I think maybe you can talk a little bit, because there are a lot of tools out there, right? There are other revenue accounting tools that are out there, subscription model tools, but they don't offer the flexibility, the power, and the integration RAR does. Maybe you can just kind of talk for, you know, a couple of minutes about why that's so important from this evolution perspective, Pete. Pete?
Sorry. I mean, the BRIM and RAR combination, I mean, we have several customers that, you know, are trying to really refine their go-to-market strategies as well as their business model, right? And BRIM allows them to do a lot of that. And then they want to be able to see those results in real time, of course, on the revenue. So that linkage, that integration is huge, very important. And being able to do that more and more quickly is important, right? So the real-time nature just speeds up. So you're now getting into these, you know, iteration cycles, right? These very quick iteration cycles, and the faster you can do it, the more insights you get.
Absolutely. And the idea, what I was thinking, Pete, was the idea of the integration, using obviously some of the same master data, but even the fact that RAR provides pretty easy process, and of course we have some videos on it, but you know, the easy processes of things like contract modifications, and the fact that you can go in, and as the subscription model is evolving, RAR can adapt and move quickly with contract modifications, contract changes, contract combinations.
Right.
As subscription models change, variable consideration becomes an issue as to how you position different POBs within that context. And I think the beauty of RAR is that it does all of that, and it does that all very well and very easily. Like you always say, you know, it's the automation and simplification of your revenue accounting, right?
Yeah.
So,
Oh, great.
Just a quick comment on that is that we We like to challenge Pete and his team because on the BRIM side, we always talk about all the data elements. So consuming service in streams, you can have 15 different components. And we like to say that, well, each line item really has its own life cycle because you could be consuming service that you can recognize revenue now, or you could be consuming service that you may download and consume in a future date. So all those have to be tracked. It's not just simple that, okay, you have a monthly recurring fee plus some data usage, but the usage may be very complex. There might be hundreds of line items and each of them have its own life cycle. So it's not that simple to solve unless you have some, a robust system that can really look into every single line item and understand, are we recognizing revenue at the right time?
Mm-hmm. Pete, you were going to say something?
No, I'm good.
Good. All right. No problem. All right. So, as we can see, BRIM and RAR together give you this opportunity and this model in which you can move to new models. Companies that are evolving, whether it's things like Stitchbox, Birchbox, Porsche that I love to mention has a subscription model that you can enable, and it's changing those business models. The tool model is a great one as well. But a lot of companies also are looking at the idea of how do I do process optimization? And let me put a little bit of context around that. So, at Bramasol and working with Pete and the SAP team, we have this framework that we use called comply, optimize, and transform. And the idea is that you move along this framework as you establish your business and your processes. And the first step is really, we call it comply, but it's more of setting the foundation for your business. And what you're doing is, you're looking at the needs of today's compliance standards, whether it's the RAR standards, the ASC 606, IFRS 15 standards. There are a lot of others out there. But the idea is that you're creating a firm foundation for your business, and you're creating and establishing transactional excellence. You're sure, for example, that the journal entries that are created, the dollar values associated with, and the postings are done correctly, that they're the correct calculations, and they're in accordance with financial rules, whether they're an ASC, a GAAP guideline, or just the calculations that you expect to see. And once you've established that, you want to improve ROI and position your company for tomorrow. So you're looking across operational excellence. And this is where BRIM and RAR, I think, come together really well, is as you begin to look at the integration of both of these, you can establish operational excellence and look at your order to cash process. You can look at your AR AP processes. You can look at many of these and establish what we'll call operational or process excellence. But the goal of this is not just to tweak and make things better. That's a great thing to do, but it's how do I transform my business? How do I drive innovation and agility, not just to survive, but to thrive in this new future we talked about, the subscription/solution economy. So what you're establishing is this concept of what I'll call organizational excellence, and that you're using data and you're using innovation to drive your business forward and create the insights you need. So with that in mind, what I wanted to do is, Pete, RAR drives this idea of simplification and automation of revenue and drives insights. We know that a lot of customers use it to help improve and optimize their business. Maybe you can talk for a minute about some specific ideas or examples that you know of.
I mean, the core issue around revenue accounting and reporting usually is compliance, right? And John, we've talked about this, so I know you have some thoughts on this. And typically, the first wave, the customers are really scrambling, right, to meet the new requirements. With that said, the new requirements are very granular, and as we've learned, that potentially gives you the ability to actually know a lot more about your revenue stream than you ever did, right? So right now, in the new world, all these performance obligations are broken up by different installments. That's data that you can mine, right? In the RAR system, we calculate that up front, and then you can mine it. And we do have some companies, you know, especially in the telco area, that have looked at that, and they make that connection. And I think there are also ways where you can potentially combine that with BRIM, in the sense of they're looking at the revenue very detailed by different performance obligation, which really are the packages, right? The marketing packages that they're introducing. They're seeing what, you know, how are they being accepted, and then using that feedback loop to try to refine their marketing packages. So in that sense, there is a additional benefit by just beyond just compliance, right? But certainly RAR can automate, it can simplify. We have customers reporting that. We're also trying to get some better real world feedback on improvements to the close, right? Because for some customers, you can see some nice benefits on your reporting cycles, especially if you had not automated your revenue, or your revenue automation was maybe in Excel or some other disparate systems. So really, those are some of the key things. And as we get more into the S/4HANA version, the optimized contract management version that allows you the Fiori UI and embedded analytics, some of these insights are going to be real time, right? So beyond the compliance and the automation, you now have additional insights, right, that you can really leverage.
Yep, and in particular, I think the beauty of also of the Fiori and, you know, the things we've seen in 1909, but also, the new versions of OP 2020 for RAR that are coming out are the analytics. And I think there's a lot of value and tremendous insights that will be added as we see some more of that, particularly related to, the revenue schedule, the waterfall reports, insights on outstanding POBs that you can look at and say, oh, that's really interesting. I noticed that almost nobody is taking it. It doesn't look like anybody's taking advantage of our upgrades. Maybe we should be doing something. And that moves to, the BRIM conversation that says, well, is there something in that subscription? Is there something in there, or is there something that I need to be doing differently on my billing plans, for example, right? So.
Yeah, I mean, we've had customers use this data, right? I mean, you now, from your billing plan, you get these revenue documents, but they're all linked together, right? You have the same items, right, from the order, and now you're seeing the revenue streams, right? And you can see if customers, if it's a subscription, if they keep opting in for it, right? And so these are some very, very critical insights, right, in your customer base that some of our, customers are making, right, between
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. And combined, I know, and we won't go into it here, but we did a webinar on COPA, right? An integration of COPA to drive not only the insights on take rates and the revenue itself, but combining that together with cost accounting gives you some insights into profitability at the POB level too. So it's pretty exciting. It's cool stuff. I guess it's a nerdy thing to think it's cool stuff, right?
Well, I think it's, and I think Richard can talk about some of the examples in the media, right, on the BRIM side.
Yeah.
So we've had
Richard,
success
yeah,
there.
we talked about this. Maybe, again, share some of the things that some of the large media companies are doing in this space. How are they taking advantage?
Yeah. Well, John, when we engage with some of the largest media companies on earth, the juggernauts of the media companies, it's funny how when we have discussions with them, it's a little bit different than some of the smaller companies. They give us requirements on really about revenue recognition. Can you handle revenue recognition? And what about my FX exchange? What about 150, some odd currency, all the different languages? Can we get through that first? And if you can accommodate that, then we can have the additional discussion. And what about revenue share? Meaning, can your system provide or help us with instead of at month end provide some analytics and how much we actually have to pay out to some of the content owners? Can we have that automated so that every transaction that's linked is also linked to a payout to the content owner? So that content owner can look at it and say, okay, I want to do a negative confirmation. I want to make sure that you did sell this content. And what if there's a defect? We always talk about working backwards. If you can solve that, that's really a major undertaking. it's one thing about billing and collecting, but what happens when there's a defect and we have to do a refund, and then you have to actually, claw back some of the payouts when partners are involved. And if all of it is connected because there's a header, then you have a really visibility into every line item that's going through your financials. And of course, that also impacts RAR. But those are some of the tasks that we thank goodness that we can accomplish because we work with some of the largest media company, and it doesn't have to be media. It's really, if you think about even service companies, if you were to buy a ticket on a train in Europe, chances are it might be a BRIM solution that's managing this, this ticket that you're going from point A to point B. You're going through 17 jurisdictions, and someone has to, give money to every jurisdictions that you pass through because the train track goes through other states, other countries. And how do you manage that? And how do you tie it back to that specific ticket? So a lot of these discussion really wraps around revenue recognition. If you have to look backwards starting from the financials and not starting from the marketing. Of course, marketing will always, dream up of things, but the financials have to keep up with that. And that is, how do you recognize revenue? How do we make sure we get the FX correct? How do we make sure that, we tie everything back? Because right now, companies are looking at, they want to drill back into the pennies. No longer is it acceptable that you can just give an estimate, but they really want to look at the pennies. And that includes tracking, okay, if we're selling clicks and views, well, they want to make sure that there's 1 million clicks and it's been verified, and they want the details of that.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and they want to make sure that I think of myself. You mentioned, the downloads, or you mentioned, the media. What if they have to do refunds? I can't, I know as I fly, or used to fly, we don't do a lot of that anymore, right? I would download a movie. Well, sometimes the movie worked and sometimes it didn't, and I would have to get a refund. Well, how does that work? And how do I account for that in my revenue recognition processes? And bringing these together, of course, is great. The other thing we see a lot of course, is, you mentioned not just large media companies, and I think that's certainly a great example, but, we're seeing evolution in other industries. Now, take, for example, the automotive industry, right? We know that, some of the largest automakers are now beginning to look at data down to the vehicle identification, the VIN number, but more importantly, they're offering subscription services. If you get a new car, you get, maybe you get 6 months of free satellite radio, but after that, it's not free and you have to pay for it. Now, how does that revenue get accounted for? And how do you know, again, how does the satellite radio company know, hey, John was on the, since I'm from New Jersey, I'll throw it out there. He was on the Bruce Springsteen channel, right? And I was listening to Bruce all day. They get royalties for that. There's something there. So that's, again, you're enabling these different models, right?
Mm-hmm. Right, absolutely. And, to offer some of these free, for example, what you just mentioned, maybe you could tie that into a beverage company, and that is, hey, if you want to subscribe to this service, watch this 3-second video clip, and you will have 3 months free. And from that standpoint, maybe the system could start collecting on your behalf. Yes, it's zero to the customer. It's a free service on a monthly bill, but I'm actually charging the beverage company or the satellite company or any other company that I'm partnering with because I'm advertising for them. So I'm actually billing them at a different rate, but I'm giving to the end customer as free. So that also could be achieved because, again, we have that capability of having both customers, partners. We just call it a business partner. Whether you're collecting money or paying out money, it's still with the business partner concept. But we can set it up so that it's really linked. So you can have really a single invoice with multiple payers. And you may not see it because it's sitting on someone else's account, but they're all tied together. So that's the unique thing about our solution.
Absolutely. Let's take, for example, what do you think is a key feature as you think of these media companies and others? And we talked about it, is it the flexibility, the integration, the security, but if somebody's sitting out there saying, oh, there's lots of things out there, why should I consider SAP order to cash / BRIM over something else? What do you think is a key differentiator there, Richard?
Yeah, I think it's really, it comes down to flexibility, modularity, and flexibility in billing and flexibility in collection. And also the ability to trace, and of course, a sound financial package, whether we provide this traceability, and it doesn't matter. You can actually run a competitor financial, but the detail we sometimes refer to our solution as a subledger. We provide that detail for you, and we'll just transfer a summarized posting to your, financial package, whatever that is. But I think with today's world and post-COVID and what's happening in the news, I think we actually need to be have the ability to be compassionate about what is our end customer facing. So if you take a large enterprise that's selling goods and service, and maybe their customers have been paying for years, but maybe because of COVID and because of the lockdown, they may not have cash to pay the first 3 months of their invoices. And I think with this COVID era, and this is for any company, and how do you offer flexibility well, basically you have two choices. You can either write it off, because now that you deem the receivable is really not probable, so you can write it off, and then you might ding the customer because they haven't paid. But what if you just basically offer a flexible payment and say, hey, look, I understand this, we're in really challenging times. We'll take the first 4 months of invoices that's really overdue. We're going to remove the fees. We're going to remove, of course, we're not going to cut off service, but we'll just spread that over the next 6 months without interest, without fees. And that'll help you, of course, with their cash flow, but it also help you with not writing down the receivables. Of course, there's some, once you extend past 1 year, then you have to look to see, okay, is it viable consideration, your price concessions. There's a lot of other things you have to think about once it gets past a year, because now you're financing. But actually offer flexibility in the collection process. So, do you have that ability, to create installment plans? A lot of our customers that retail customers really are using our solution so that they can have that ability. They want you to consume everything that they have. At the same time, they want to, be flexible in terms of, hey, we understand we'll take your gift card, we'll take coupons, we'll take cash in any currency, but at the very end, there's a balance. What if we, give you a no interest over 6 months, 6 weeks, whatever that, whatever that terms may be, to actually pay. And I think that's something that's key. So the two really key things is the flexibility in billing and the flexibility in collection, especially now.
That's great, right? And Pete, just to give you a head, from your perspective, I think from an RAR view, of course, how does RAR has to report all of this, and its flexible capabilities enable that. So any thoughts or comments on that?
Well, I mean, it's at the core of RAR is a rules engine and an event engine, right? And so we're always trying to enhance that so that as your portfolio of revenue scenarios change, you build up the rules, and that flexibility kind of allows you to leverage that, to a greater extent in the future, right? So the knowledge base gets bigger in the rule set, then that flexibility becomes a little easier to manage, right? Because you might see a case and then you've already covered it, and then a case like it comes, and then you can leverage the rules that you've already built, right? And so that's the idea. So we've tried to build a flexible system, and we're always trying to improve that flexibility.
Absolutely, great. All right. Well, let's go ahead. We're right on target, so we'll wrap up for real quick. I think you've seen, in the beginning of this, that the business models are changing, and we see this every day. I think the 2 slides that I showed, but the first one is really mind-blowing for me, that we've seen more uptick in e-commerce and the change of business models in the past year than we've seen in the past 10 years combined. And I would expect to see that acceleration continue. And of course, you'll need tools like BRIM and RAR to do that. You're seeing a growth in the XaaS, so X meaning anything as a service. And you can have, as Richard pointed out and Pete, these ideas of I can have an automobile as a service. Imagine that instead of my lease being based on flat monthly payments, I get charged by the miles that I drive, and there's an intelligent, Internet of Things that's in there, or my, insurance for that car is based that way. And of course, we see that in many other subscription models in other areas, whether it's pet food, clothing, food. But we're also looking at these outcome-based models. How many widgets did you use? Companies that have been in the medical space have been doing that for years based on how many tests you run, right? You buy the piece of equipment, it comes with a software upgrade, it's got software, but they charge you for the consumables and they pay you for the number of tests you run. SAP BRIM, or order to cash, and RAR are a great combination to help you with these new business models or to optimize existing processes. And we talked about the idea of the comply, optimize, and transform as a framework for you to think about this process and the flexibility, scalability, and modularity, if you will. And I know, Richard talked in the beginning, and we'll let you guys kind of do a kind of a summary statement in a second. Richard talked about the standalone nature of BRIM, and that you don't necessarily have to be on an SAP ECC system or ERP to take advantage of BRIM. The same is true, and Pete, maybe while you're wrapping up, I'll give you a chance to go first and wrap up. You can talk a little bit about some of the work being done on, if you're, RAR as maybe an engine for that as well. So Pete, why don't you wrap up with RAR, and then Richard, kind of a wrap up on BRIM, and then we'll take it from there.
Right. Do you have the slide, your optimize, comply, optimize, transform slide, or not?
I do, right there.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I think this is a really good slide, and John and I have presented this at a couple different sessions, and we've always gotten good feedback on it. I think from a customer perspective, I think it's easy for you to just say, hey, which box am I in? John, I think, 2 years ago, most were in the comply box. Yep. I think many customers now are kind of in the optimize box, and maybe even looking at the transformation box, or the transfer box. Mm-hmm. So I think this is a really good graphic to see where you are, and then kind of look at what kind of things you're trying to do. I think if you're beyond the comply piece, then you can look at different items of RAR that might be beneficial. For instance, on S/4HANA, if you opt into the optimized contract management module, which is also included with RAR, so there's no additional software, you can get benefits like Fiori and embedded analytics, and that might allow you to optimize some reporting or some other items that also could be considered a transformation, right? So some of these kind of, you might be doing more than one depending on what the landscape change is. And of course, all along the way, you could still be looking to integrate with BRIM, right? To take advantage of those interoperabilities and the benefits we talked about. So I think that's enough for the summary on the RAR side.
Cool. Richard?
Yeah, I think John mentioned, and of course Pete mentioned that we do have a lot of technology, and it is all wrapped around either in the ECC or S4. To John's statement, you don't need to. Part of the BRIM solution is embedded in the S4 or ECC, but part of it is not. It really depends on the need. What he was referring to when he mentioned that you don't need an ECC or you don't need an S4, what he's saying that you don't need to configure the entire package that has with all your financials, etc. But it's just really, if you're running a different ERP that's not SAP, we basically will have this ability to post into that application. Now, if you're existing SAP customer, of course, we like to and come and evaluate where you are in your S4 journey, and look at does it make sense to activate the components within your environment that's relevant that you need, or do you need a component outside of your environment? So it really depends. But I think we just at SAP we just have to be flexible. I mean, our customers expect us to be completely integrated, which we are, but at the same time we have to be flexible, that we have to be modularized, and really depends on what your needs are in the next 5 years.
Absolutely. So thank you both. It's been great. This is I always learn, and I appreciate what you guys coming on. Hopefully the audience got some great value. If there are any questions out there or comments, please share those. In this wrapping up, and I'll stick with the comply, optimize, transform as we wrap up. Again, Pete and Richard are spot on, and we talk about comply, but think of it as establishing that foundation. Whether you're establishing a foundation for a new subscription model and you want to use BRIM to help you with subscription order management, or you have billing plans, or you have other things that you want to do, and establish that firm foundation for that new model that you want, and you need to report on it, of course, those two tools come together and help you with really great insights to do that. But as you move forward and optimize your business, you're beginning to optimize those, you can begin to leverage those two tools in concert. Think about the insights that are provided by both RAR and BRIM together to provide you insights on profitability, on take rates, on billing plans, and they provide you that flexibility to optimize those processes as well. And finally, as we see companies transforming, again, using these tools together to transform their business into a more flexible, scalable, and agile business in the future. And of course, Bramasol is a great partner of SAP. We service both of these areas. I encourage you to check out our website. We have health checks that you can do in the RAR space, the revenue accounting space, and think of it more as a revenue accounting ecosystem or a order to cash ecosystem. It sits in this broad context, and of course provides that scalability, flexibility, and insights that you need. So with that, I will thank Richard and Pete very much, as always. I want to thank all of you for joining. We have a quick question here. Look at that. So there is a lot of training. Yep. So reach out to us. We do offer training on SAP modules, and there's a lot of training online that Richard and Pete have. So why don't you follow up, and we'd be glad to help you with that. And of course, we have dozens of videos and webinars, so you can learn a lot about RAR in particular and BRIM from those videos and webinars. All right, another question or comment? Thank you. All right, well, you're very welcome. Thank you for joining us. All right, well, everybody, thank you very much. Thank you, Pete and Richard. I appreciate it. Look forward to working with both of you. Please, everybody on the line, stay safe, stay healthy, and we look forward to seeing you at a future webinar. Take care, and bye-bye.